Welcome to We Day Unsue Up, the Great Minds. I'm Göran Terborn, Professor of Sociology Emeritus at the University of Cambridge. And at a global level, seeing the world as one single country, global inequality is now back at its level of the 1890s, where the top 1% of the population has an average income of 144 times of the bottom half, the bottom 50% of the world population. This enormous unequalization has been driven by the surge of capital income through financialization, debt, aggressive lending, forcing large people in debt, speculating in real estate and in stock markets. The stock market values have been the dominant criterion of firm performance. But it's noteworthy that this unequalization has not been an economic success in terms of economic development and economic growth, and particularly growth of the more developed countries like the US or like Korea, for instance, is only about half of what it was in the period of equalization, 1945 to 1975. So we may ask, why hasn't democracy been able to stop this enormous increase or surge in inequality? There have been recent studies in several countries, starting in the US, but also in Western Europe, showing that when political preferences differ between the richest 10% and the bottom 50% of the population, the preferences of the richest 10% always win. But it's noteworthy that there is a broad section of the economic elite who are worried about inequality, not because they think it's bad, but because they are afraid of rebellions against it. The two other kinds of inequality, vital inequality of life expectancy and health, and existential inequality of respect, recognition, freedom, have developed unevenly and in rather different ways than economic inequality. On the whole, people live longer lives, more healthy lives now than they did 50 years ago. That's the true thing for the whole world, basically. But there have been some episodic setbacks of life expectancy which are worth noting and remembering, because they are likely to come again. The worst such setback was the AIDS epidemic in the late 20th century, which cut life expectancy at birth in southern Africa by up to 17 years in Zimbabwe and 10 years in South Africa. And then recently we have had the pandemic, the COVID-19, where the statistics is not fully in, but we have already, some demographic calculations which show that in Russia and in the United States, both countries, the pandemic meant a decline of life expectancy of 2 years. Another interesting aspect of, a worrying aspect, I would say, of life expectancy is the continuing inequality within countries. The gap of life expectancy between the upper middle class and the lower classes is increasing. Existential inequality, finally, was not hit by the great unequalization process of after 1980. On the contrary, one could say that existential inequality has continued to decline. Patriarchy and sexism has continued to erode, although it's not has not disappeared, and we also see a decline of racism, and they have this kind of existential equalization has been able to continue and develop with the secularization of the world, and because it's not part of the capital-labor relation. And movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter show the need for deeper analysis of processes of existential inequality and of racist and sexist violence.